Imagine that you're financially independent. Think about that. Your choices in life no longer revolve around whether or not you can afford it. Okay, maybe to some degree, but for the most part, you can go about living your life knowing that you have a plan to meet all of your needs and your wants. That means more traveling, more restaurants, more leisure, and more living and enjoying life. You might know that we work with retiring federal employees, and many of them have been very successful in building their wealth up to that point. And so they come to us for help on how to make sure that now their money lasts for the rest of their lives. But I realize that I rarely talk about what are some factors that got them to that success in the first place. How did they get to a place of being able to retire? What did they do along the way? And what are some potholes that they made sure to stay away from along the way? From a financial planning perspective, there are several elements that you want to factor in your plan to make sure that you're maximizing your wealth along the way. So let's jump into several of these so that you can start using them in your plan as well. The first element to check is how are you doing with your debt management? Now, this one is tricky because I'll be the first to tell you to not pay off all your debt as aggressively as possible. That's right. This is a big it depends. The wealthiest families that we serve know how to use debt to their advantage. We loosely define debt as either good debt or bad debt. The list of bad debts is pretty long, and I think most of you understand what falls in that category. For instance, credit card debt is bad. High interest payments, you don't want to be racking up credit card debt. Student loans is also a form of bad debt. The other are car loans. These are also bad debt. Now, not that any of these things were bad to begin with, but the liability only serves to drain your cash flow, which means you have less money to continue investing and growing for you. Most of these have high interest payments, especially the credit card, and virtually none of them have any kind of tax advantage, with the exception of possibly student loans in some cases. Your cash flow in retirement is considered your heartbeat. So if you were to squeeze that cash flow because of liability payments that have to go out each month, that can make meeting ends meet a bit more challenging. So what's good debt? Well, there's really only one that falls in this category, and that's a mortgage. While a mortgage does also drain your cash flow, this is an expense that you cannot forego. You're either going to be renting or you're going to be paying for a mortgage. But with a mortgage, you can have extremely low interest rates, especially if you refinanced within the last couple of years. And if you're sitting on a mortgage interest rate of 3.5% or less, then this is virtually the category of free money. With money markets paying as much as 4 to 5% these days, why would you accelerate payments on your mortgage that's costing you 3.5%? Could you instead be using your money in a smarter way? For many of our clients, this means locking in things like bond ladders that are paying almost twice as much as their mortgage costs. Now, this is where I tell you to speak with your advisors, because obviously I don't know your specific circumstance, and so you shouldn't take this as advice, but just know that your advisors should be having these conversations with you. Next up, are you managing your cash flows properly? Cash flows is just simply defined as the dollars going into your household versus the dollars going out. In other words, what you earn versus what you spend. And there's this really dangerous concept that I warn younger families to be aware of, and that's the principle of lifestyle creep. As you progress through your career, you'll likely be earning more. You're getting things like promotions and pay increases, cost of living adjustments, bonuses, and etc. And over time, you'll find that it gets easier to do more traveling, or maybe get a nicer car, maybe spend more on restaurants and dining out, or join that club you've always wanted to join. And all of that is great. We want you to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. But are you managing how quickly your lifestyle is increasing relative to your income? Are the two of them proportionally increasing? If so, consider whether you're not actually going up. Consider whether you're just making lateral moves, because the more income that comes in, more is flowing out. Now, of course, buying a nicer house means that it may have greater appreciation, so not all of this falls in this category, but it's something to be aware of. The key here is that if you're not paying yourself first with every pay raise, then you might have it backwards. You see, the first thing that should benefit from your pay increase is future you. Take a look at your TSP contributions. Are you on track to fully max out your TSP contributions for the year? For anyone under 50, it's about $22,000 a year, and if you're over 50 in 2023, it's $30,000 a year. And remember, these limits will increase over time, allowing you to put even more in the TSP. So if you're not aggressively saving in the TSP, I want you to do a 1 to 2% increase to the TSP every time that you get a raise. That's money that you didn't already have before the raise, so really you're not going to miss it. You're not giving yourself the whole raise in the TSP, unless you want to, and now that money gets to be invested in the TSP and has the opportunity of growing. The more that you have in the TSP working and growing for you, the quicker you'll reach the goal of becoming financially independent. Now, even if you're maxing out your TSP and maybe your spouse is also maxing their 401k, that doesn't mean that you have to stop investing. You can always continue to save and invest inside non-retirement accounts. In fact, I encourage you to start doing this as soon as you can. Many of our clients use non-retirement accounts in the beginning of retirement, and it helps them stay in really low tax brackets so that they can save tons of taxes throughout the course of their retirement. That kind of tax planning is only possible if you've done the legwork up until then. We'll put some links of other videos I've done that talks about how this works in the description if you want. Now, if you've just started, you want to make sure you're doing at least 5% into the TSP. These days, I believe they auto-contribute that amount, but if it's not, just double check to make sure you are. This is because you'll get the full 5% match, and that essentially means you doubled your money. The point is, we have no problem with you upgrading your lifestyle as you progress through life. Just make sure that you're doing so responsibly along the way, and that you know the long-term impact of any decision that you choose to make. All right, next up, managing your allocation. Depending on how old you are and your aversion towards risk, your TSP allocation might be all over the place. We find that the closer people get to retirement, the more conservative they want to get with their investments. And fundamentally, this does make sense because you do have less time, but we seldom see families invested in the best way possible for them. Federal employees tend to be more conservative investors anyway. Yes, I know, not all of you, but for the most part, knowing that you're retiring in 5 to 7 years is going to want to make you preserve what you've built up until that point. You start to get nervous about what if the markets begin to misbehave again. And it's completely normal to feel this way, but you should understand how being invested like this can impact your ability to stay retired. Think about the cost of gas 15 or 20 years ago. How cheap was it compared to gas today? The same is true with everything that we spend money on. Once you retire, how do you make sure that your investments are not only growing to keep up with cost rises, but also replenishing the amounts that you're pulling out? You're not only fighting inflation, but you're fighting the fact that you're withdrawing from your wealth as well. I've lost count of how many TSPs this year I saw that were 70, 80, 90, 100% in the G fund. A lot of federal employees that we've talked to this year were scared of the markets because of what happened last year. And so they jumped into the G fund to help protect what they've worked for so far. But how many of them were ready to get back into the markets in time? The S&P 500 is up somewhere around 13% or so as of this year. And how many feds were successfully able to get from the G fund into the C fund in time? I haven't seen too many that did, and the ones that did go back in were very late. This is what I call the G fund trap. We get stuck in maintaining that safety, and then we miss out on the potential growth, which is so critical to achieving that financial independence that we want. The last several years of your career can be monumental for the growth of your portfolio and in helping you achieve financial independence. And if you were scared out of the markets, then you might not participate in that growth. If you're holding a high cash position because you're in the middle of planning or there's changes coming up, then that can be okay for a period of time. Interest rates are paying decently enough where it's not the end of the world if you stay in cash for a bit more. But anything over a year, and you really need to start considering what to do with that money. So make sure that you're talking with your advisors. For anyone who's thinking, the G fund is not cash, it's short-term US Treasury. Look at how much it's paying you. You can earn the same or better in cash money markets these days. Okay, the next one. How prepared are you for long-term care? Folks, this is a big one. If you don't know what it costs to have some help later in life, then you're in for quite the surprise. I was talking to somebody recently who was telling me about their grandmother, and they said that tragically she had taken a fall and really injured herself. And from that moment on, everything changed. She needed more support around the house, and unfortunately, she didn't have long-term care insurance to cover that cost. And so the help that she needed to hire to help her with those daily activities cost her somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000 each month. And unfortunately, she didn't have the resources to continue paying for herself, so her family had to come in and start contributing financially as well. And it's really not uncommon to see these kinds of expenses if you get hurt and you need help around the house. Now, the challenge is that so is long-term care insurance. It can be very costly to insure this risk. In fact, if you're on the federal long-term care insurance program, right around now, you're probably getting a letter in the mail talking about how much your premium is going to increase. And that's the key here. You really want to start thinking about long-term care in your 40s and 50s while you are still mid-career. Not only is it likely going to be cheaper for you, but you're less likely to be uninsurable. Group plans like the Federal Long-Term Care Insurance Program can be easier to get in, but the prices will continue to rise probably for your whole life. This is just the way that they're designed, and so this can be challenging not knowing what the costs will be in the future. Some private policies can lock in the premiums so you at least know how to budget those in. As a fiduciary to our clients, we always want to talk about the risks present. And so sometime in November of this year, 2023, we're going to be releasing a video of my conversation with someone who is an expert in how to address long-term care. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do that now. And if you're watching this after November 2023, then check the description box below for a link to that video. So managing your debt, managing your cash flow, making sure your insurance is set properly, and getting your TSP allocation correct, all of these are really important. And in this video on the screen, I talk about how we would invest the TSP as professional financial planners. So make sure you check that out. Once again, I'm Thiago, and if you're interested in seeing how we help clients have a better retirement, be sure to visit us at thefedcorner.com. And until next time, stay wise and stay wealthy.